What if I told you that the difference between a life of regret and a life of fulfillment comes down to what you do in the next 24 hours? Today, I'm going to share the story of Marcus, a man who learned the hardest lesson of his life from watching a single seed crack through concrete. This story will make you question every "I'll start tomorrow" you've ever said. And by the end, you'll understand why success isn't about talent, luck, or connections. It's about something much simpler, yet much harder. But here's the thing about this story. It doesn't just teach you about success. It reveals why most people fail, and more importantly, it shows you exactly how to make sure you're not one of them. Before we dive into Marcus's transformation, if stories like this speak to your soul stories that don't just entertain, but actually change how you think and act, hit that subscribe button right now. Because every week on the day, everything changed. I bring you real stories with real lessons that successful people use to build extraordinary lives. In the heart of Detroit, in a neighborhood where abandoned lots outnumbered thriving businesses 3-1, lived Marcus Thompson. At 35, Marcus was a man of magnificent dreams, trapped in a cycle of magnificent excuses. He had vision. Oh, did he have vision? He could see it all in crystal clear detail. His own fitness center, not just any gym, but a community transformation hub where people would come not just to lift weights, but to lift their lives. He'd sketched the layout 100 times, researched equipment prices, even picked out the perfect location, an old warehouse on Corktown that seemed to whisper possibilities. Marcus had been a personal trainer for 8 years, working at a corporate gym chain where he felt like just another cog in someone else's machine. He had the skills, the passion, and the knowledge. What he didn't have was the habit of turning dreams into actions. Next month, he'd tell his girlfriend Sarah when she asked about his business plan progress, "I just need to save a little more." Soon, he'd tell his mother when she inquired about his entrepreneurial dreams, "I'm waiting for the right moment." But here's what Marcus didn't understand yet, and what cost him years of his life. The right moment is always right now, and tomorrow is where dreams go to die. His apartment reflected his internal state. Business books with bookmarks stuck on page 37, a laptop with a business plan document, last modified 6 months ago, a gym bag that spent more time as furniture than equipment. The vision was there, burning bright in his mind, but it remained trapped behind walls of procrastination that grew thicker each day. Procrastination had become his invisible prison, disguised as comfort and rationalized as being careful. Single quotes. Each postponed decision strengthened the bars of this prison. Each "I'll do it tomorrow," adding another lock to his dreams. Every morning on his way to work, Marcus walked past the same cracked sidewalk. It was unremarkable, just another piece of urban decay in a city trying to rebuild itself. But one Tuesday morning in early spring, something caught his eye. There, pushing through a hairline crack in the concrete, was the tiniest green sprout. Not even an inch tall, barely visible, but undeniably alive. Marcus almost stepped on it. Almost. But something made him pause, crouch down, and really look at this impossibility. Here was a seed, probably dropped by a bird or blown by the wind, that had somehow found its way into the narrowest gap in solid concrete. It had no soil, no gardener, no one cheering it on. Just a relentless drive to become what it was meant to be. "Stubborn little thing," Marcus muttered, then caught himself smiling. He looked around, slightly embarrassed for talking to a plant, then hurried off to work. But throughout that day, during every break, every quiet moment, his mind wandered back to that sprout. What kind of force could push through concrete? What kind of determination could turn a seed into something living, something growing, in the most impossible circumstances? The next morning, Marcus found himself taking a slight detour to check on his discovery. The sprout had grown, just barely, but undeniably. Day after day, week after week, Marcus watched in fascination as this tiny plant defied everything logical. While he was making excuses about why he couldn't start his business, not enough money, not the right time, too risky a seed with no resources, no guarantees, No safety net was literally breaking through barriers that seemed impossible to overcome. This tiny plant was doing what Marcus had been procrastinating on for years, taking action without perfect conditions, growing without guarantees, pushing forward despite uncertainty. Spring turned to summer, and Marcus's little sprout had become his daily checkpoint. What started as a curious glance had turned into a morning ritual. The plant was now 3 inches tall, with actual leaves, still growing from nothing but determination and that tiny crack in the concrete. But then the storms came. Detroit's summer storms don't mess around. They come with wind that can knock grown men off balance and rain that floods the streets in minutes. Marcus watched the weather forecast with an unexpected anxiety, not for himself, but for his plant. The first big storm hit on a Thursday night. Lightning split the sky, rain hammered the earth, and wind howled like a living thing. Marcus lay in bed, actually worried about a plant he'd never even touched. Friday morning came with clear skies, and Marcus's heart pounding as he approached the sidewalk. The plant was flattened against the concrete, its leaves torn, its stem bent at an impossible angle. It looked dead. "Well, that's that," Marcus said aloud, surprising himself with the disappointment in his voice. He stood there for a long moment, staring at what appeared to be the end of his daily inspiration. But something made him come back the next morning, and the morning after that. By the third day, the impossible happened. The plant was standing again, damaged, bent, with scars that would never fully heal, but alive and reaching toward the sun. Marcus knelt down and whispered, "How do you do it? How do you keep going when everything is against you?" The plant, of course, didn't answer. But in that moment, Marcus felt something shift inside him. If a seed could push through concrete, survive storms, and keep growing without any encouragement or support, what was his excuse? That evening, Marcus called his mentor his old high school coach, Mr. Williams, who had believed in him when no one else would. Coach Williams was now 73, retired, but still sharp as the day he'd pushed Marcus to be team captain, despite being the smallest guy on the football team. "Coach, I need to ask you something," Marcus began, pacing his apartment. "You remember how you always used to say that champions aren't made in the gym, they're made from something deep inside them?" "Of course, son. What's eating at you?" Marcus found himself telling Coach Williams about the plant, about his dreams, about the years of starting and stopping, planning and never executing. He told him about feeling stuck, about watching everyone else seem to move forward while he remained frozen by his own fears. He confessed how procrastination had become his default response to anything that mattered, how he'd become a master at finding reasons to delay what he knew he needed to do. Coach Williams listened without interrupting, the way he always had. When Marcus finished, there was a long pause. "Marcus," Coach Williams said finally, "let me tell you about the difference between dreamers and achievers. Dreamers wait for perfect conditions. Achievers create conditions. That plant of yours? It didn't wait for perfect soil or ideal weather. It used what it had where it was. Procrastination is just fear, wearing a disguised fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being judged. But that plant doesn't know fear. It only knows growth. But coach, what if I fail? What if I lose everything?" "Son, you're already losing everything to time. Every day you don't start is a day you can't get back. That plant could have stayed a seed forever, safe and unchanged. But seeds aren't meant to stay seeds. They're meant to grow, even if it means breaking through concrete. The antidote to procrastination isn't motivation, it's action. One small action leads to another, and before you know it, you've built momentum that becomes unstoppable." The conversation lasted 2 hours. Coach Williams shared stories Marcus had never heard about students who had overcome impossible odds, about his own failures and comebacks, about the simple truth that separates those who achieve their dreams from those who die with them still trapped inside. "Marcus," Coach Williams said as they prepared to hang up, "I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Tomorrow morning, when you see that plant, I want you to make a promise to it. Promise that you'll show the same courage it shows every single day. The next morning was different. Marcus woke up before his alarm, not because he had to, but because something inside him had awakened. He dressed quickly and walked to the sidewalk where his plant, now nearly 6 inches tall and fuller than ever, swayed gently in the morning breeze. Marcus looked around to make sure no one was watching, then knelt down beside the crack in the concrete. "Okay, little fighter," he whispered. "You've been showing me what persistence looks like for months. Today, I start showing you what I'm made of." He stood up, pulled out his phone, and did 3 things that would change the trajectory of his entire life. First, he called the landlord of the warehouse he'd been considering for 2 years. "I want to schedule a meeting to discuss rental terms today." Second, he opened his laptop and finished the business plan that had been 90% complete for 8 months. He didn't make it perfect, he made it done. Third, he called his bank and scheduled an appointment to discuss a small business loan. But more than the actions themselves, something fundamental had shifted in Marcus's mindset. For the first time in years, he wasn't planning to plan. He wasn't preparing to prepare. He was acting. The grip of procrastination that had held him captive for so long finally loosened, not because he felt ready, but because he understood that readiness is a myth. The plant hadn't waited to feel ready. It had simply begun. The warehouse meeting went better than expected. The owner, Mrs. Chun, had been looking for someone to breathe life back into the space. She offered him a lease-to-own option that made the impossible suddenly possible. The business plan, once completed, revealed that Marcus had been overthinking what was actually a straightforward proposition. He had the skills, he had identified the market need, and he had a location. What he'd been missing wasn't more planning, it was more action. The bank appointment led to a small business loan approval, contingent on Marcus providing a detailed timeline for opening. Not a someday timeline, but a specific week-by-week roadmap to opening day. By the end of that first day of action, Marcus had accomplished more toward his dream than he had in the previous 3 years combined. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it happened consistently. Just like his plant, Marcus grew a little bit every day. Some days the growth was barely visible, other days it was dramatic, but it never stopped. He faced his own storms. The first month, his old car broke down and he had to bike to construction meetings at the warehouse. When he couldn't afford professional help, he learned to install equipment himself through YouTube videos and sheer determination. When his initial marketing budget proved inadequate, he got creative, partnering with local schools and community centers instead of paying for expensive advertising. But here's what Marcus discovered that changed everything. Every obstacle overcome made him stronger, not weaker. Every problem solved built his confidence for solving the next one. Every small victory created momentum for bigger victories. 3 months after that first day of action, Thompson's Transformation Fitness opened its doors. It wasn't the gleaming palace Marcus had originally envisioned. It was better. It was real. It was his. And it was serving the community he dreamed of helping. The plant, meanwhile, had grown into a small but thriving shrub. City workers had noticed it, and instead of removing it, had built a small protective barrier around it. Other residents began referring to it as the miracle plant, and some even started leaving small amounts of water for it. 1 year later, Marcus's gym was not just surviving, it was thriving. He'd hired 3 other trainers, developed programs for seniors and teens, and started offering free classes for anyone who couldn't afford membership. He'd found a way to make his business profitable while serving his community's needs. The most remarkable part of Marcus's story isn't his success, it's what his success inspired in others. Sarah, his girlfriend, had watched his transformation and started her own business as a nutritionist. "If you can break through concrete," she laughed, "I can break through my own excuses." His mother enrolled in college at age 58 to finish the degree she'd abandoned 30 years earlier. "You showed me it's never too late to grow," she told him. Even some of his gym members started their own small businesses, their own artistic pursuits, their own long-delayed dreams. The courage is contagious, Marcus learned. When people see someone break through their limitations, it gives them permission to examine their own. But perhaps the most meaningful change happened on a cold February morning, exactly 2 years after Marcus first noticed the plant. He was walking to work as usual when he saw a little girl, maybe 8 years old, kneeling beside his plant now, a robust shrub despite the winter. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked gently. "My mom says this plant grew through concrete all by itself," the girl said, looking up with wide eyes. "She says if it can do something impossible, maybe I can too. I want to be a scientist, but kids at school say girls can't be good at science." Marcus knelt down beside her. "You know what? They're wrong, and this plant is proof. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the most impossible places. You just have to keep reaching for the sun." Marcus's story isn't just about opening a gym or even about persistence. It's about the moment we stop letting our circumstances define our possibilities. It's about understanding that the seed of everything you want already exists inside you, waiting for you to give it permission to break through whatever concrete is holding it back. But here's the truth that changes everything. Reading about transformation isn't the same as experiencing it. Knowing about growth isn't the same as growing. Marcus didn't change his life by learning about persistence. He changed it by practicing persistence, one small action at a time. He defeated procrastination not with perfect planning, but with imperfect action. So let me ask you the question that could change your life. What's your concrete? What's the thing you've been telling yourself is impossible, too hard, or someday? What dream is waiting for you to stop procrastinating and start progressing? If this story stirred something in you, if you felt that flutter of possibility, that whisper of, "What if?" then do something right now that proves you're different from who you were 25 minutes ago. First, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because every week on The Day Everything Changed, I share stories like Marcus's stories of ordinary people who discovered extraordinary courage and transformed their lives. These aren't fairy tales. They're blueprints. They're proof that what looks impossible is often just unpracticed, and that procrastination's biggest lie is that tomorrow will be easier than today. But more importantly, I want you to take one action today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect, but today. It doesn't have to be huge. Marcus's first action was just making a phone call. The plant's first action was just pushing up a millimeter through solid concrete. Leave a comment below and tell me, what's one small action you're going to take today toward the dream you've been postponing? Share it with our community, because accountability turns intentions into achievements. Remember, every oak tree was once a nut that held its ground, and every success story started with someone deciding that today was the day everything changed. Thank you for spending these 25 minutes with me, for allowing Marcus's story to find you exactly when you needed to hear it. I'll see you in the next story, where we'll discover another person who proved that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they decide to stop waiting for permission and start taking action. The day everything changes for you could be today. The only question is, will you let it?